Hi everybody, my name is Chad Husted. I'm an editor with Hardware Retailing Magazine, and today we're hoping to show you a couple kitchen gadgets that you might want to bring into your store to really excite your customers. So I really enjoy cooking, and I also really enjoy gadgets, so it's become maybe a little bit of a problem that I have a lot of kitchen gadgets. So I'm kind of just showing a couple of them off, and then also showing you how you can use some of these items in your own home to kind of spice up your cooking and do some things that you normally wouldn't think that you could do in your own home. So starting off, we have a Sous-Vide machine. Now, the whole idea of a Sous-Vide machine is basically a water bath. It's a heating element, a temperature control, and a water circulator. It's really all it is. This is mine. I've had it for several years. They actually make them much smaller now. This is probably on the larger end, but this is the whole setup. It's basically, you can use, this is a pasta pot, stock pot that I use to cook all my pasta in it. But it's big, it can hold a lot of water, so I like to use it for this. You can also use any food-safe plastic container, anything that can keep the Sous-Vide machine upright and can hold enough water for you. You can use a lot of different items for it. So what we're going to do today is cook some Tenderloin Steaks, and now these are really great pieces of meat to use in a Sous-Vide machine because of how thick they are. So if you're cooking kind of a thinner half-inch ribeye or something like that, those are perfect for the grill, the stovetop. Those are perfect ways to cook those because they're thinner pieces of meat. But the problem with the tenderloin, especially ones this thick, is that when you're trying to get that perfect medium rare for me temperature in the middle, you're overcooking the outside of it. It's a very lean piece of meat. It cooks very quickly and it dries out very quickly. So what you're doing with having it like this in a water bath is you can set the temperature. So right now I have it set at 130 degrees. Mine has sometimes drops a little below that, so I actually have it set a little bit above 130 degrees. But you can't go above that range. It's set at whatever temperature you want. So that gets me a nice medium rare that I'm looking for. And you can bump up that temperature to get whatever kind of doneness that you're looking for based on your own preferences. But it can't dry out and it can't overcook. It's all about the temperature you set it at and how much time you want to put in there. So I've already got one bagged up. This is just a freezer style Ziploc bag. So you want a little bit of some thickness to the bag there to protect, to make sure it doesn't break open and contaminate your water. And we've just really heavily seasoned the steaks with salt and pepper, very simply. Then it's a rosemary sprig and some butter. These are very lean pieces of meat, so a little bit of fat in there in the cooking bag is not a bad idea. So that's why we have some butter in there. So really, you just want to put it in the bag like this. And then one of the main things that you're worried about when you're cooking sous vide is that you want as much air out of the bag as possible. So there's different ways to do that. There's a vacuum sealer. If you have one of those, that's another kitchen gadget if you're interested in adding that to your store. I don't have one of those, and there is another method for people who don't have those kinds of appliances. So what you do is kind of seal it just enough to there's a little bit left over here in the side where it's open, and then you drop it into the water. Now the thing about cooking sous vide like this is that the water is warm, like you don't really want to stick your hand in there for too long of a time, but it's not boiling. It kind of keeps it right there below that boiling stage. So you can still use your hands in it. Like I said, it's pretty warm right now. I'm not going to want to stick my face in there, but so you stick the water in there just enough and make sure it's sealed all the way around, and you get a lot of the air out of there, like you can see right there. So that's a pretty good seal. And then you just sit the bags in the water. And what I like to do, this is actually just a little tip that you want to kind of secure the bag so it doesn't move around as the water is moving around, because that's the whole water circulation. It can move your food around. So using just like a paper clip like this and securing it to the side of your container kind of keeps it in a spot and in the direct line of the heat that you're using to cook the water. So to heat the water, I should say. So put those steaks in there, make sure that they are fully submerged. Perfect. That's a lot easier when you get all the air out of there to keep them from popping up and bobbing up and down. So yeah, all it is at that point is timing. It needs to just cook up to the temperature for enough time that you want it for the level of doneness you want your steak. These can cook anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. They can probably go even longer than that, but if you get beyond 2 hours, it's not going to overcook it, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but you're gonna get kind of a mushy texture to it. It's gonna start kind of breaking down just because it's gonna be at that temperature for such a long amount of time. So 45 minutes gets you where you wanna be. You're still fine after 2 hours, but you probably wanna pull them out of there before you get too long in there. So we're gonna go ahead and let those cook, and we're gonna move on to some of our other gadgets. This is really one of my favorites. It's really taken off of late. It's the electric pressure cooker that I've had for a little while. This is a 6-quart option. They make them even bigger than this, and they make them all the way shrunk down to like college student dorm room style. So they've really got a whole lot of different options with them. So if you're anything like me, I grew up with my mother telling me the horror stories about pressure cookers. That basically they're the most dangerous thing you could have in your kitchen. They were old. The older versions were on stovetops. They could get out of control, get too much pressure in them, basically turn into explosions, and cover your kitchen with whatever you're cooking, as well as the lid wherever that was going to go. So they've come a long way. My mother was terrified when I got one of these, but they do still come in the stovetop versions. This one, however, is electric, and it gives you a lot of different options because of that fact. You can use normally as a pressure cooker, but you can also use it as a slow cooker, like a crock pot. You can make yogurt in it. There's canning options. A lot of different things you can do with it because it seals in and it gets you a higher temperature than what you would normally be able to get at whatever elevation you are. It basically puts you deep down on the ground with more pressure on it, allowing temperatures to get higher. So anything that you would braise over a long period of time, like those recipes that call for like multi-day cooking of a really tough piece of meat, you can do it a lot faster using a pressure cooker just because of the higher temperatures you can get there. Now, the thing I'm going to display with this particular recipe is the ability to use one pot to get an entire meal, and it all cooks together, it all cooks at the same time. That's something that really works well with the pressure cooker for this recipe, which is Southwestern chicken and rice. So everything goes in one pot. It's the rice, it's long grain brown rice, and then it's going to have frozen chicken as well. So because it gets such high temperatures, it cooks the rice. This is actually a big reason that I love this machine. I just cook rice in it all the time. It's my primary rice cooker. But you can also use it with recipes like this where you're using frozen chicken, not thawed, and it cooks just in the same amount of time as everything else does. So it's just a really handy thing to have that's a lot of fun to work with. So to go over some of the ingredients we're going to use for our Southwestern chicken and rice: long grain brown rice. Then we got salsa. I just use mediums because that's what I like. Some dark red kidney beans, some low sodium chicken stock, some frozen corn, and then this is a spice blend. Mostly chili powder, but it's also got some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some cumin in there as well. And then we're gonna have our frozen chicken. So we'll start layering everything out. And something to keep in mind when you're using a pressure cooker is that it has to have, no matter what you're cooking in there, it has to have a certain amount of liquid. There is actually, because this is electric again, there's a burn alarm that'll come on if there's no liquid in there and it senses that it's just burning something and cooking it. It's very loud and it's not fun to listen to. So you have to have a certain amount of liquid in there. That's where we're getting a lot of the chicken stock, and then the salsa helps us there too. So we start with the rice is in there, put the salsa in there, beans, and the chicken stock. So that gets us up to our liquid level, and the chicken stock is really nice to have because it gives you some flavor in the rice, isn't just water and rice. Then we get our corn in there. That'd be fun. And then I'm going to put half of, this is all the seasoning already put together, I'm going to put half of this in at this point to flavor everything that I've already put in there. There we go. We'll mix that together. Really trying to make sure you're getting the seasoning on every ingredient, and also making sure that the rice is down into that liquid so it will cook properly. And then just layer the chicken on top like this. You want it down in the rice and the liquid a little bit. And then you want to use the rest of your spice blend on top of your chicken. So that's getting its own level of flavor in there. All right, a little bit more, make sure everything is put together. All right, so it really is just that simple, just a couple of simple ingredients and some seasoning to make sure you're really kicking it up a little bit. And then take your lid, and then it lets you know it's sealed. When you're using a pressure cooker, it's all about this valve right here, making sure it's on the seal or on the vent. We're making sure it's on seal. So, and then to make this particular recipe, go to manual, and then this calls for 24 minutes to cook. So get it to 24 minutes. That lets you know that it is now coming up to temperature. You set your timer for 24 minutes. So what a lot of recipes don't take into account is the time it takes to get a pressure cooker up to pressure and then also to come back down from pressure. That timer there isn't going to start until this is up to pressure, which could take, depending on what you have in there, how much you have in there, a couple minutes. So once it gets up to pressure, that's when the timer will start. And then how you release the pressure, there's two different ways. There's natural release and quick release. So natural release is just letting it'll turn off the heating element and it'll slowly come down in temperature, and that's how you know, and that's how it will just naturally, it takes several minutes. It's gonna take a while to do that. You can also quick release it with this vent, switch it over, and whole bunch of steam. You don't wanna be standing over it when you do that. A whole bunch of steam, very hot gases are gonna be coming out of there, but it gets the pressure out quicker. So you can get in there for whatever you want. So different recipes call for different things. This one, we're gonna let it get up to pressure, then we're gonna let it cook for 24 minutes, then let it do natural release for 10 minutes just to make sure that that's really for the rice, to make sure that the rice is well and done, and then we're gonna hit quick release and we'll show you the steam and everything like that when that comes out. So we're gonna go ahead and let our Southwestern chicken and rice cook, and then we'll look at some other gadgets. All right, we've got one more gadget for you guys. This is an air fryer. So air fryers use no oil at all, but because they just have such high heat and high air circulation, they're constantly circulating very high temperatures around the food, you can get similar results to what you would do if you deep fried something without using the oil. So it's still not like healthy. Like don't think this is some miracle. You can have all the French fries you want. You can't. But it is healthier than using oils to do the frying for you. But you get that crust on the outside, but still that fluffiness in the middle, or all the other textures that you get through frying, the reasons we like frying, you can get them with an air fryer and just doing things just a little bit differently. So to go with our steaks, we're gonna have some French fries put together. I just took a russet potato and just chopped it up into 1/4-inch fry segments essentially, and then we blanch them in some cold water that gets some of the starchiness out of them. And it really makes for a better result there at the end. All you have to do is just let them kind of sit in some water for a couple minutes after you get them chopped up. So you want to dry them off though. So get all our fries out of there. And then you want them, just like if you're deep frying something, you don't want to put wet things into oil because that's when you get splatter and bad things happen. So you don't want to do that here. It's not going to be because of the oil situation, but it will be because you want that crusty exterior that you're looking for in a French fry. And if you put soggy French fries in there, you're going to get soggy French fries out of them. So what's important when you're using an air fryer, one of the key ingredients to how it can do what it does is the air circulation. So it's very high heat, but then you want it to be able to circulate a lot of air around everything. So when you look at these pans, there's always going to be a grate at the bottom that allows air to get underneath whatever food you're cooking. So you want a kind of a single layer in there. So like I said, this is just a russet potato. Let the skin on because I like the skin. And so just gonna take your French fries. So we had a pretty big potato, so we're not gonna be able to fit all of them in there. But so we have a nice layer there in our pan that we're gonna want to then stick back into the air fryer. And so this is just a fresh potato. This doesn't take long at all. It could be about 15 minutes. You can set different temperatures. I'm gonna set this one to 380 degrees. and it's gonna cook for 15 minutes total. And then we're gonna flip essentially at the halfway point. What you wanna do is just take the pan back out. It'll keep running. It'll just try to keep it up to temperature, but you can pull the tray out even during the cooking process. Just kind of be careful, it's very hot in there. And then just kind of give it a shake. Just kind of, you're trying to redistribute, make sure that everything's getting as much air as it can. So basically the entire device is the heating element. It's all about the heating element. This thing does get pretty hot, but it's all about getting as much heat into that cooking area as you can while also getting as much air circulation. You can also, a thing that I like to do to increase how much you can actually put in there, you can get trays or kind of stands. So you can have a bottom layer like the French fries, and then you can have a top layer, something sitting above that, so you can cook proteins like fish or something there. That's another way to kind of get the most out of this, but it cooks things very, very quickly. We're using a fresh potato right now, so that's going to be really easy to cook. You can cook your frozen food and just what you would normally fry or put in the oven. Use your air fryer, it's faster, and you get more of that kind of fry texture that's really nice about that. All right, now we're back to finish up our Southwestern chicken and rice. It's smelling great right now. It's gone all the way through its cycle for 24 minutes, and then we let it naturally release its pressure for 10 more minutes. And so this is now what you do for the quick release. We're probably gonna get a lot of steam here, so like I said, do not stand right over this when you do that. You're gonna let it go like that. All right, and so now even as it's still releasing, what you'll notice, it won't let you open it until it's satisfied that it's really let all its pressure out there. So it's still releasing, and therefore it's still locked. That's what you'll find on every pressure cooker. Modern ones now, they're very conscious of those safety items. So it's almost there. Another tactic you can use for cooling down a pressure cooker faster, if it has a stovetop version, then you can stick the whole pot into your kitchen sink and pour cold water on it. If you've ever seen cooking competition where they use pressure cookers, try to cook really fast and under like a limited amount of time, that's a big thing they do. Obviously you can't stick this in your kitchen sink, but you can put cold water into and make a damp towel and throw a cold damp towel on top of it. That towel will probably get pretty warm pretty fast, but it does get a lot of heat out of the cooker. So our pressure is now gone, so we can open up our pressure cooker. And then what you're seeing in here is just some really well done chicken, and all that liquid has been soaked up by the rice. And so really what we want to do is get in here and just shred up the chicken. You can see the chicken is absolutely just falling apart. Remember, this was frozen. So everything cooked up just the way you want it to be. Chicken's nice and tender, and you just kind of shred it. So then, once you have the chicken kind of shredded up, just get everything nice fluff. So that rice is going to be on the bottom. So you want to fully incorporate the beans and the corn and the chicken all together. That is Southwestern chicken and rice. Best way to serve that, I like to put some shredded cheese on top of it and some hot sauce. Some tortilla chips also gives a nice crunch in there. Some sour cream. You can really treat it a lot like chili for the different things you put in chili, because there's a lot of the similar flavors in there. But that is a one-pot meal, Southwestern chicken and rice. All right, we're not done using our pressure cooker at this point. So another thing that this device can do is act as pretty much a hot plate. Anytime any kind of cooking device that you plug in and have kind of mobile in different areas, maybe at your tailgate, something like that, and just have a pan. This works just the same way. So it just heats up just like it normally does. We just don't have the lid on it. but we can really use it in this particular situation because we're going to sear our steaks that have been sous vide. So our steaks have been going for about an hour at 130 degrees, so that keeps them a nice medium rare. On the inside, it's cooked. You can tell on the outside there's some juices along with the butter that it cooked in. So that's where we're getting a lot of really great flavor, and we've already seasoned it. So now we're just trying to get a good crust on it. What's that? It's called the Maillard reaction. It's when you apply very high heat to proteins, and that's where you get tons of flavor profiles when you do that. So you don't want to just dive into the steak, even if it is the perfect temperature that you want, without putting a crust on it. So that's what we're going to do. So we take it out of our pot that has been cooking in, and you want to be careful with it because there are a lot of juices and stuff in there. So take it out of the bag, move to a plate, and then you want to pat it dry. Because when you're searing it, you really want it as dry as possible. So that's how you can develop that crust the way you want it. And so the pressure cooker has come up to temperature. It says hot on the front, lets you know that saute mode is where you want it to be. So I'm just going to take some olive oil, just a little bit in there. Just enough to coat the bottom. And so let that get a little bit warm in the pan. You want that olive oil to be up to temperature as well, so that's what is going to conduct that heat to get you that really good sear when you put the steak in there. All right, looks like our olive oil in the pan is shimmering now, so we're going to want to go ahead, put our steak in there, looking to get a nice sear on it. All right, so that sound means you got a good temperature. This is already cooked. The steak is where you want it already. You just really want to get that sear and that crust on it. So a minute on each side is really all you're hoping to do here. And another good thing to keep in mind when you're doing a steak like this, when you're finishing a steak like this, you don't want to keep moving it around and things like that. You're really trying to, once the pan is hot and you've got it where you want it to be, make sure that you're just letting it go because that's how you're developing that crust. All right, we're going to go ahead and flip. So got a nice deep crust on there. That's what we're looking for. So we just want it on the other side as well now. A really great thing to do is if you can, you have a large enough pan on one side, kind of pick a side of your pan. I like doing this when I have my whole kitchen available on a nice cast iron skillet. It can get really hot and can maintain that temperature really well. You kind of pick one side of it for one side of your steak, and then you flip it. When you flip it over, go to the other side of the pan. That way you're getting it as hot as possible of the contact and developing that sear the way you want it. All right, I think we've got both sides of our steak the way we want them now, so we'll go ahead and take that out. All right, that is not half bad right there. Tenderloin steak. Now, do not cut into this right now. You can absolutely, all your hard work, all the time you put into this, ruined if you dig into that steak right out of the pan. So you really want to let it sit and rest for a solid 10 minutes. I've heard ratios of however long, if you're roasting or you're just cooking on a stovetop, however long you've developed that flavor and you've cooked for that long, half that is probably what you should rest it for. So we're going to go ahead, let this rest, and we're going to work on our fries to make it a full steak frites meal. All right, our 15 minutes are up in the air fryer, so our fries are done. We have our nice rested steak. It's that perfect pink that you're looking for medium rare. Again, you can make that to any temperature you want, but this is how you can get the entire steak to be the temperature that you want while still having that crust and not worrying about it overdoing it. So then whatever a good steak frite needs, some good fries, we just cut up a russet potato and then air fried it in our pan. So that's pretty warm in there, but just gonna sprinkle some fries. Put there on our plate. And then I'm pretty simple on my fries. I just like a little bit of salt on them. You want to do this when they're warm like that. A little messy on that one. But And that gets us our steak frites. All right, so that's our video for today. Using 3 different kitchen gadgets, our air fryer for one, an electric pressure cooker for another one, and a sous vide water bath machine. We were able to put together a 1-pot meal, Southwestern chicken and rice, and then also steak frites using air fryer to make some homemade fries from roasted potato, and some steaks using sous vide that were then seared in the pressure cooker, showing kind of one of its multifaceted uses. So hopefully this gave you a little bit more information on different gadgets that you can really attract your customers with and really liven up your kitchenwares area. Make sure to check the category spotlight in our January 2019 issue. For Hardware Retailing, I'm Chad Husted.